In the military, there is this popular idea that you should buy a house at every duty station. And I don't think this could be further from the truth. My name is David Perret from Military to Millionaire, and today I want to discuss the argument about whether you should rent or buy a house in your own city. Before we begin, I want to know, do you rent or own your primary residence? Comment down below, rent or buy? Oh yeah, and one last thing, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Now let's get started. Sure, buying a house at every duty station seems like great advice to people who started investing in 2010. But what about the people that bought at every duty station in 2004 and 2008? Obviously, there is great intention behind this advice, and I can certainly appreciate the thought. But as the saying goes, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. I have been on both sides of the fence before. I have purchased a residence as a house hack at a duty station, and I've also rented a residence at base housing at a duty station, and I'm currently renting right now. I purchased my first rental property while stationed in Missouri as a recruiter. A year later, I moved to Hawaii, and I spent the last 3 years renting there while investing on the mainland. Too many people get wrapped up in debating whether you should rent or buy your residence without understanding that it depends mainly on your market. Now, one can argue until you're blue in the face that renting is dumb, but if the average home price is over $800,000 and won't even come close to cash flowing, I would disagree. Does my market appear to be better suited to renting or buying? The market always dictates this decision for me. The first consideration you need to have is the average purchase price in your market. If you're earning less than $100,000 per year, probably don't want to consider buying in a market where the average home price is over $750,000. The principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, PITI, alone could be $3,750 a month on a property like this. That means you could spend $45,000 a year on your PITI, which would be almost half of your income. I think this expense should be enough to deter you, but just in case, remembering that if you're spending 45% of your annual income on a house, it will stifle your ability to save and build capital for future investments. Now, that means you are placing your hope entirely on appreciation, which in my opinion is kind of a gamble, which more to follow. The next thing you need to look at is population and economic growth, or the lack thereof. Remember, in order for your home to be an investment, you need to buy it as an investment, not as a home. This means that you need to analyze the macro and micro factors that can affect a market. You want to see at least 1% population growth every year for the last 2 to 3 years. Real estate is definitely a supply and demand business. The more people that need homes, the merrier. You also want to see a growing economy and ensure that its growth stems from diverse industries. An argument for the necessity of diverse industries is Detroit. Once a booming metropolis, it has declined in population and economic prowess year over year for decades. Why? Because it relied too heavily on one industry, automobiles. For this reason, I like to see at least 3 different economies alive and well in my markets. For example, the area where I invest has 3 growing colleges, a booming industrial district, several food and beverage manufacturers, not to mention it's being a transportation hub along Interstate 40. Look for diverse, growing economies to ensure a steady stream of new jobs that will keep the population cycle growing. Now, nobody can know for sure what a market will do in the future. We can, however, understand what a market has done in the past and see where it is in the cycle. For example, in 2005, the median home price in San Diego peaked at $572,900. In 2011, the median home price had bottomed to $370,300. Now in 2018, the same county reached a median home price of $627,700. It can be reasonably assumed that we are at least near the peak of the market, and understanding these market cycles and weighing them into your decision-making process is critical. When I was moving to San Diego over the last month, I was deciding whether to buy or rent. Again, due to several reasons, I went with renting. One of which being where we are in the market cycle. I am not confident enough in the market continuing to trend upwards to justify buying a $600,000 home. The nice thing is that renting in an expensive market, where the median income is higher, can afford you opportunities to pump additional saved income into a more affordable market. So me saving money means I can invest it elsewhere. Cash flow is the lifeblood of rental property investing. When your properties are producing positive cash flow, almost any storm can be weathered. If your properties are not producing cash flow, however, it opens the door for disaster to strike. Cash flow, for those of you unfamiliar with the term, is simply the amount of money you receive from the monthly rental income after you have budgeted and paid for all expenses. Cash flow is important because you can reinvest the profits into more properties. This is often a less discussed factor in the rent-buy decision, but it is very critical because when a recession hits, cash flow allows you to continue holding properties even if the property value drops. It's much easier to hold on to a property that has lost value when it's paying you to do so. Unfortunately, it can be very difficult to cash flow in expensive markets. This is because the cost of a mortgage loan climbs higher than the average rent prices in the area. Do not buy a rental property that doesn't cash flow. Just don't do it. Don't forget to factor in the cash-on-cash return. There are many people in Hawaii who would argue me, but it is possible to buy cash flowing real estate here. Yes, they're correct. But generally, it's still a terrible investment. The cash-on-cash return is my strongest argument against buying in overly expensive markets. Let's say you find a property to cash flow for $500 a month in Hawaii. Is that a good amount of cash flow? Maybe. The problem is that you had to spend at least $600,000, probably more, to purchase this property. Now, assuming a 20% down payment, this property required $120,000 as a down payment. $500 a month times 12 months is $6,000 a year. That is a 5% cash-on-cash return. Now let's say I buy a property for $100,000 with a $20,000 down payment in the Midwest. And let's say this property only brings in $200 a month in cash flow, a conservative number in my market. $200 a month times 12 months is $2,400 a year. That's a 12% cash-on-cash return. At this rate, putting the same $120,000 used as a down payment for the $600,000 property into $600,000 properties would bring in $1,200 a month, as opposed to the original $500. Which market was the wiser cash flow investment? The cheaper one. Appreciation is the #1 justification that others use for buying in overpriced markets. I tell appreciation investors that I'll cross my fingers for them. Appreciation is a great bonus to cash flowing real estate, but it is just that, a bonus. I believe this because nobody knows what the market will do next. The homeowners that lost everything in 2008 thought the market was going to keep improving. The people who failed to buy in 2011 at the bottom of the market did so because they were convinced the market would continue going down. Appreciation can be a huge windfall when the market skyrockets after you purchase a property. But I don't believe this outweighs the damage that can happen when the market tanks and you lose everything. Now, there are ways to plan for appreciation. You could purchase after a crash. You could force appreciation through renovation. You could buy well below market value. These are all viable strategies. However, too many people buy in places like Hawaii, San Diego, or Washington, D.C. without being realistic about where they are in the market cycle or what could happen to their properties. Don't bank on appreciation. It should not be your motivation to purchase real estate. Appreciation is a great bonus, but that's how you need to look at it, as a bonus. Guys, there is no shame in renting where you live and buying elsewhere to invest. Grant Cardone does it, and he's arguably one of the largest real estate syndicators in the nation. Unfortunately, I think pride is often what drives the idea of buying a house no matter where we live. I'm a real estate investor, and real estate investors own homes, dang it. It's a great idea, but don't let it talk you into a bad decision. Always remember to buy a residence as an investment, not as a home. If it doesn't make sense as an investment today, don't buy it. It may not ever make sense. The only exception that I would make here is if the home is your forever home and you can cover all your expenses through other investments. Again, that's not an investment, but do what you got to do if it's the home you want to live in for the rest of your life. Make no mistake though, this home is a liability, not an asset. Let me know what you think in the comments, guys, and subscribe to this channel for more real estate investing content. From Military to Millionaire, this is David Perret, signing off.